We're having issues again, like we had the last time,
Really?
and
It
yeah,
says we're live.
yeah, but not in all locations. So I'm going to have to
Hmm.
trying to fix it as we speak. Hey there, hi there, ho there, out in Spray Wash Land. We're having a little bit of technical issues on the back end here, so we're trying to get everything going and done and all that kind of fun, happy stuff. I was able to fix this the last time.
Huh. Because when
I think what I've had to do before was I had to remove it and then put it back on. So I'm gonna try to do that.
strange. Hey, David, how are you doing, buddy? Good to see you.
I'm not sure what's going on.
So where's it showing that it's not at?
Just remove the destination. All right. How about this? I'm going to duck out for a minute. I'm going to let Ray talk while I try to go into the back end and fix some things. How does that sound?
All right, sounds like a plan, man.
All right, I'm going to duck out for just a second.
All right. Oh, what's happening, guys? Sorry to drink my dinner in front of y'all, but it's been one of those days. Everybody is doing amazing out there in Spray Wash Land. It is December 4th already, so we are on the rocket sled. Oh, bam, to the holidays at this point. So Doug's out here fixing our where we need to be at on broadcast. So don't know exactly what's going on with our StreamYard, but we were pre-gaming tonight and thought we would talk a little bit about lift safety. Something that always happens, and ironically, like right now I'm seeing guys doing a lot of Christmas light out there and unsafety out there is always predominant. Guys, this safety issue is it's a big deal, y'all. It really is a big deal, and I really recommend that if you do any interviews with television, you do any ads that you're going to put out there, that you as the owner of the company don't have to have any safety. You don't. You can tap dance naked in golf spikes across the roof if you want to, if you're the owner of the company. However, the minute that you go out there and tell an employee to hop up on a roof and you're not providing them and requiring them to wear PPE, you've now got a problem. Is it unfair? Yeah, it is. Is there an OSHA exemption that you weren't, you remember that, how many times we used to see this 6-8 years ago? Oh, there's an OSHA exemption that if I'm not up on the roof very long, that I don't have to have that on. That's actually incorrect. There is no OSHA exemption. If you're not going to be on a roof very long, you don't have to be on there. Now, again, owner-operator, do you have to wear safety gear? No, you don't. But your employees, you dang well better be wearing safety gear, and you better be taking pictures of them. Anything you put out, they better have safety gear on there. I think Doug and I saw a commercial the other day, or a television interview about somebody hanging Christmas lights. And they had multiple employees out there on this television interview, scurrying around a roof, working at heights, and not even having safety harnesses on. Am I going to sit there and tell you that I always wore harnesses? No, I didn't. But dang it, you don't need to have pictures of harnesses. I know of one particular company here in Tallahassee. They literally lost their insurance because they had pictures of them doing roofs all over their Facebook, all over their website without wearing harnesses on there, guys.
And going back to what you said at the very start, though, you said, is it unfair? And it's kind of not really, if you think about it, because the whole purpose of it, you as the owner don't have to have, you can be exempt where the employees can't. And
Yep.
is that unfair? No, it's really not, because it's about protecting the employees. Now, going down that rabbit hole a little bit, I think sometimes the restrictions that are placed seem to be more unsafe. They create an unsafe factor. But all of these rules are designed to protect the employees, whether we like them or not.
Well, and I would say, practically speaking, wear a harness, even if you're not tied into anything.
Mhm.
Have the harness on. If you've listened to me at any, length of time at all, I will never forget. My guys were doing a hotel back in 2014 or 15 or so, and they actually got pumped by an OSHA inspector, a group of OSHA inspectors came out, showed the credentials, and my lead tech called me and he said, "Oh, Ray, we just that OSHA came out here," and I was like, oh, freaking out. And but one of the things the OSHA guy said that was always so poignant, it's always kept with me, because my guys followed protocol. They were going to be using a lift that. It just happened that OSHA was staying at the hotel that we were washing. It was a Holiday Inn. So lift was back in the place. It was a 50-foot tow behind. The guys came out and put their harnesses on the back of the lift, literally hung them on the gate to get into the lift, meaning they could not get into the thing without picking their harness up. I think one of the crew members actually put their harness on. They went and put their cones out. They did all the safety protocols. And whenever the OSHA guy came out, he actually said, "We really appreciate your care, your dedication to safety out here. And we also hope you're still just as safe whenever we come back here at about 4:30 this afternoon," which, weird thing, we were off that job at 4 that afternoon. But again, you never know when OSHA is going to show up. And if you get up there, and I've even gone as far as calling, competition in Tallahassee, going, "Hey, dude, you realize you got a picture of you in a lift without a harness on." I said,
Because it's bad for all of us.
That picture off. I'm not ratting you out. I'm not calling it in, but this is just me being, hopefully a good business friend to someone and saying,
and a good steward to the industry.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And don't put the pictures of us being safe out there. But for whatever reason, Doug and I got talking about lifts, today, and hopefully this is going to help somebody out here. And, lifts are always, "Hey, Rich, what's happening, buddy?" Lifts are always an issue. And now that we have, drones becoming more and more prevalent in the industry, we wanted to talk about lifts one more time. And I dare say that Doug and I have probably spent more time than most human beings, certainly more than most human beings in the wash industry, and lifts under the performance of our duties. Because we have that was my specialty, was mid-rise, 3 to 8 stories. It seemed like I did a lot of that,
Lifts, cranes, buckets of all sorts, bosun's chairs for Ray, not for me, but like that.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Water-fed poles. Even those can even help you out in some of these taller structures.
Absolutely. Stephen, hey, you know what? Get as high as we need to at work. Bob bought his own lift. Absolutely. James has a great point here. When you start bidding loans for bigger companies and you win against them, they get hurt and they call OSHA out on you, and they come out and check everything. Ask me how I know. 100%. That does happen in this industry, unfortunately. You will get
competitors never call and rat on you. Yeah, that never happens, right?
That would never happen.
Even if they're 2 and 3 states away and have nothing to do with you. Yeah.
And I understand, guys, sometimes that thing happens with lifts. One of our very good friend, I don't know if we have permission to name him or not, but and this happened probably 2014 or so, but he was washing all of the roofs in an HOA down in Central Florida. He had a 65-foot boom. He was driving along on the neighborhood streets, and a sinkhole. There was a void underneath it from a washout from irrigation water for the neighborhood. The lift hit it, caused a sinkhole to form. The lift went over and into a roof. It happens. Was it any kind of fault of his whatsoever? No, it was not a fault of his. But were they operating the lift incorrectly? No. Was the guy wearing a harness? Yes, he was. He would have been flung out had he not been wearing a harness, and then they may have been dealing with either a death or a serious injury on there. So,
and just so you know, inside those baskets, there's typically a place where you can anchor off right inside the basket. There's little eyelets there in a couple different locations so that you can anchor off right there and be the anchors are typically right in the center near that line,
And but that's the problem with accidents happen literally so fast that you can't stop them. You don't have time to typically react to them. And you literally can't do a thing in the world about it. So, nope. And that's what happens whenever a sinkhole opens up under your freaking man lift out there. Stuff goes over. Mm-hmm. I've got a picture right here that I'm going to show y'all of one that the dang thing opened. Lift tipped over. They were at full extension on a 185-foot lift. They had lift pads down. It didn't slide down a hill or anything, but literally the lift tipped over on there. Some winds got up on it, and I can't find. I thought.
Gene, we were just actually pre-show. We were talking about that one. Actually, we talked about both of them. We talked about the one that caught fire. That's been a few years back. Excuse me. And then the same thing with the that one with the police chase and all that. Yeah.
The one that caught fire.
May be out of the ordinary, but still, you got to plan for anything.
Fire was actually here in Tallahassee. Mm-hmm. That was Rich. That was here in Tallahassee. Where the guy, he spun it around. It was a painter. He was painting the side of the building and then spun it back around this way. I actually had it sent to me by somebody at TFD, and he arced over two of the lines. Literally, the only reason that man did not die is because he had the presence of mind to not touch any of the metal in there. He had insulated shoes on. He stood ramrod erect straight in the middle of the basket. But that the tires melted on that lift. Mm-hmm. Then the diesel engine caught on fire, and fire was working its way up the boom before Tallahassee Fire Department was actually able to, get the fire extinguished on there, and the power turned off. And remember, a lot of times the power on things like this isn't like tripping a simple breaker at all. This is. You're not going to trip the breaker, even if you've got a 80-foot lift arcing stuff out.
Well, and what a lot of people don't know is on a lot of those, the main lines, the power lines, the actual power lines on the power poles and all that, some of them, if you, if they were to arc across for whatever reason, right, and they you say, oh, the transformer blew or whatever, it may have been that a surge of power, and it can cut off, but then they typically will send another surge of power down to see if it's something that they can reactivate the power to. So even though the power may be off for a second or two, it may actually come back on, and you've got to be aware of that.
Mm-hmm. Nick is saying the fire was a swing stage. So there was a lift that was on fire. We've actually got literally the pictures are on my computer if I can find them of it. That looks like David. Um, wear harness every time getting any kind of lift. The amount of I see, without it really blows my mind. And lifts, I understand lifts become like trebuchets. If you ever, they can fling you, like that. Let me share this. This is, let me share this, the screen here.
A lot of times we see people that are, I go to job sites every now and then. I'll visit with guys and I'll see them. They'll be in a lift and they'll be driving the lift from one side to another side of the property. And they won't harness in because they're like, well, I'm only like 5 foot up or whatever that is. I'm just running the basket. You would be amazed at how, with that boom out a little ways and it hits a bump, the amount of movement. If this right here is the lift itself, the arm out there, just a slight jig here is many feet. And if you go
1 foot movement here translates into a 5-6 foot movement down
absolutely
here.
It can throw you right out of that
basket. See this right here. This is what is it, 80? No, it's 100. It's 100-footer out there. They were at full extension. They even had lift pads out, and you see that. This thing was at full extension. I'm sorry, it's an 86. It tipped over. Had that person not been wearing a harness, they could have been serious. Hell, they could have been injured this way. But luckily, I mean, it didn't sling them, and they had this building to help break their fall on there. Worst case scenario would have this thing would righted itself all of a sudden and then fixed itself and slung back that way. The person would have literally been thrown out of the lift at that point. So, these are accidents happen, and again, they happen so fast.
There's another aspect of this that you hadn't even thought about talking about, but that is on a lot of insurance policies, right? And again, this is an insurance or legal, whatever it is that we're trying to say, advice. But on a lot of your policies, I have talked to a lot of guys that say, "Oh yeah, I decline the insurance because it makes the rate of the lift cheaper because my policy will cover that." But your policy typically only covers up to a certain amount of the lift itself. And if you destroy one of those things, I mean, I think most policies, it's only like $25,000. And so think about that when you're going back to that whole electrical fire where you hit the power lines and you melted that whole thing. How much was that lift? And if you had done the waiver, if you had done the waiver just for your $25,000 policy, wouldn't have been enough to cover it.
Yeah. I was going to show, what was the name of that plantation we used to do? Link Miccosukee, that's not it. But anyway, you absolutely driving the lift, bouncing, and turf tires. While turf tires are fantastic, turf tires are also one of those things that will make your thing bounce a lot more goofier and a lot less control on your lift. And I'll never ever forget out here on I just found it. I'm going to share these photographs out here, but I'm driving a 80-foot lift down, and we had about 1.5 miles, maybe 3 miles to go on this area. An old plantation, so you have dirt roads and 5 foot high valleys, going in there. It was painfully hard to keep this thing on the road out there, even on turtle speed. with the turf tires on that. I mean, it was
How long did that
absolutely.
take you to make that? Because that's a long driveway.
Oh no, like I said, it was a couple of miles. I mean, it was a long time, but it was so bad that the driver himself from the lift company would not even risk bringing that in on a flatbed. He's like, no, you got to drive this in, to the property. But one of these properties that you don't even realize what's out there in the woods, but this lady's tree house out there on
So
there.
hey,
Yeah,
Ray, let me throw something out there to everybody too, while I'm because I'm seeing that. Just so you guys know, we're working with something called StreamYard. We can't see all of the comments. I'm actually flipping through a couple of the other stations that we're on, kind of thing, and seeing. I'm checking some things out. Like I see a comment in here from Eric Schultz that says, "Do you find value in owning your own lift or prefer to rent?" So my point in this is that if we're not responding to your comments because we try to respond to them all, it's because they're not coming through to us for whatever reason,
right.
and we just happened to see that one. So I did want to at least answer that question. Do you find value in owning your own lift or prefer to rent? I personally prefer to rent the lift. Is there a value in owning? Yeah, I guess there could be, but I can tell you, I myself personally have been in a lift when a hose popped, a hydraulic hose, and so I'm stuck on that, right? And now, if I don't know how to fix that, I've got to hire somebody to come out. I prefer to rent. I know several guys that own lifts, whether it's a bucket truck or even a drivable lift or scissor lifts or whatever the case may be. Me personally, I prefer to rent.
You to pucker up. Try washing a house that has a door of solid brass like that. Oof. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And this house had look at the size of these Japanese maples. That's a pruned Japanese maple, and we're washing the roof on this house without gutters. Just kind of made you get a little bit nervous on something like that. Yeah, big fun. Anyway, yeah, and so yeah, what Doug is saying, if you don't see your comments on something like this, showing up like this, chances are we're not seeing it because you're in a different forum and reading it. So I love looking at pictures like this. It just makes me go down memory lane of some of the absolute amazing projects we've done throughout the years. We were really blessed to do some awesome. Here's well water stains on this property, and these people don't care how much something costs. This is where price is not a factor at all with customers, because they just want their properties done perfectly. Here's one where we're taking the rust off of that. So we're talking about the maintenance on something like this. Here's one of the problems that and I totally get it. I get it. We've looked at buying lifts ourselves, oftentimes thought of doing that, but here's where people screw up, and we've actually removed the rust stains, or we're in the process of removing the rust stains from that driveway. Here's where people mess up on stuff like that, is the required maintenance on a lift. And your required maintenance is, there's a book on there, but how many times do you let the required maintenance go over, or you don't do something, don't replace the valve, or or something goes wrong with it, and you're not a qualified lift, maintenance technician on there. So then you have to go take your lift. If you're in a smaller market like me, I'm going to take my lift into Sunbelt or United Rentals, where basically I go to the back of the line for them to fix it, because I don't have a JLG or a Genie distributor in this town, except for one of the rental companies out there. And having your own lift, and God forbid something happens and you have a problem and there's an injury that occurs because of you not doing maintenance on there, boy, that's as bad as it gets right there, guys. I mean, that is going to just absolutely, decimate you as a thing.
And let's get back to some of these questions too. So, like Rich is saying, when you're driving on a somewhat rough terrain and it's bouncing like that, bend your knees a little, stand more. Yeah. So if you're standing upright and you like lock your knees, you're actually standing there. You should keep your knees just slightly bent, because boy, if you hit a bump, I mean, there's no give. There's no you're bouncing around. Where at least if what I like to do when I'm driving, I typically, because sometimes you're running two controls there, but if I'm only running the forward, I'm holding on to the side rail and I've got my knees bent. I may even have my butt against the rail behind me. So that way I can basically move and take the bounce in any given direction.
And Jeremy was asking, where's a good place to get training at? The Sun Belt, I would ask to do the training for any of the lift places they have. What is my training that I can have on here? I think this is one of ours we either have on Academy or Pro, just a very simple, not that this is an official training thing that's recognized by anybody, but it's certainly things for you to think about on here.
Yeah, I think this presentation isn't it on the Academy?
It should be, yeah.
I think it is, yeah. So the lift presentation is on there, but I think Michael Draper with Expert Safety Services, I believe he's got, if not, he can get you there. But each of the individual companies, here's the thing about lifts, or I don't care what you rent. If you rent a bulldozer, if you rent a drone, if you rent a lift, I don't care what it is that you rent. They're supposed to be able to show you, though on a lot of them, they'll say, well, it's up to you to know how to operate. Ask them to show you how to properly and safely operate it. Go into their facility ahead of time, a week ahead of time, set up a thing to have some actual training from them on their lift. Because I think personally that they're going to give it to you on almost every single time, because they have liability, I would imagine, for you getting hurt, especially if you're asking for, how to properly operate it and they're not giving it to you. So I know Sunbelt's usually pretty good about it. I know a couple others that, man, even the drivers didn't seem to know how to operate. There's so many different pieces of equipment, they don't even know how to operate them.
Yeah. So, some of the things to watch out for that on level ground, like Rich was talking about, overhead power lines. And like you had mentioned before, whenever let's say this is your pivot point, if you move a little bit here, this is so pronounced out here. So Nick works for Crystal Clean. Crystal Clean is insane about, if they have a piece of equipment, to have it checked out. They understand it. They've had OSHA inspections. They've been popped. That's one of the things. If you own a piece of equipment, machinery like that, and OSHA comes out, they're going to want to see your maintenance records on things like that. It's kind of crazy. Overhead power lines, such a biggie. You've got to have the awareness of what you're working around, and actually a perimeter that you're supposed to stay away from power lines. Whether you're with a spraying water or in a lift or even using a water-fed pole, and depending on the carrying capacity of those lines, that safety perimeter is more, and it gets bigger the heavier the line duty is. You never disabled safety features or sensors on there. The death bounce is one of the things that we talk about. And know the perimeter. Wherever you're at and can reach out into that lift, even if you plan on not working over here on this side, you're only working on this side, you still need to say, okay, what's over here that I could possibly hit, just in case I get into that zone and I extend this side out, and next thing you know, I'm swinging around, and I never bothered to check to see if there was a tree there. I never thought to see if there was a power line there. Something else, we've done lots of times in lifts is planning on going up in between tree limbs,
all the time, or between the building and a tree.
I'm going to work up between this tree limb on there. Well, guys, tree limbs are going to be a lot more a lot less flexible than you think they're going to be. You know, oh, I'll just punch through this tree limb. And so you're kind of going up there, and the tree limb gives some pushback and pushback and pushback. And next thing you know, if the tree limb does break, you suddenly shoot forward on there.
Or if it snaps through and hits one of your hydraulic lines, it can break the hydraulic line.
I watched two of my employees really get into a bad problem. They weren't paying attention, and we happened to be, you know, out on this job, but they were coming down very, very open area, but there was a handicap sign. And he literally was bringing the lift down, and he did not notice the 8-foot high handicap sign on there. And he kept on, and I was over here with the ground crew spraying some stuff. I wasn't sitting there spotting for the lift, which I typically always spotted for the lifts, but it's like, this is such an easy place. I didn't spot for them. But I remember hearing it sounding funny, and all of a sudden I looked over, and they were coming down right on top of the thing and kept on pushing and pushing and pushing. And I'm like, Matt, what's wrong? He said, I don't know. And about that time, finally the sign shot up beside the boom of the lift. So whenever it came down, he had so much pressure on it, this thing finally bent a little bit, and it went from, let's say, 1 mile an hour going down to 10 miles an hour going down. And it gave them a shock like that, and it literally tossed both of them around. Had they not been wearing harnesses, at least one of them would have been ejected from that boom lift. Now, again, it was only 8 foot above ground. It still would have hurt. And they were both shaken up and sore and couldn't work for the rest of the day just from that one accident happening. And it was for just taking their eyes off their perimeter for just the moment in a very, very safe looking area out there.
You know, when you're thinking about lifts and moving around, you know, if you're planning for using a lift and it's been raining for several days, I'm going to go here to Rich's point on that, where, you know, the ground has to be nice and solid. Think about it. If it has been raining, what happens, right? You start walking across the grass and you can feel it being kind of squishy. Your feet get wet, that kind of a thing. You know, you can park your lift on there and it seems like, oh yeah, it's all solid. When you get up there, right, and you start taking that extension up, that adds a lot of weight. That adds a lot of pressure on that. And now the front of that or those wheels can start to sink in, especially if they're not like on some plywood or something that's distributing that weight out. And now that thing starts to sink. You also need to look at what's below ground, right? Right. I know one time I was in was it 135 foot lift all the way up there. And with those, the outriggers are actually the wheels and tires. And you take the wheels and tires out as the outriggers. And so I took this thing all the way and I put it up against the curb. Didn't want to go up on the sidewalk and all. And I knew that there was a drain down the road a little ways. But once I got up there to about 135 foot, had that thing all the way stretched out. The wind is kind of pushing me back and forth. And I happened to look down, and I pride myself in making sure that things are all good. But when I looked down, I could see that drain there. And then I started thinking about, wait a minute, I'm in a really old town. What is that drain made of? And is it still solid at this point in time, right? Because all of that weight, those lifts, I don't even know, I can't remember what the weight of that particular lift is, but it's a lot. And then by taking that boom all the way up and that rocking back and forth, all that added stress on that understructure, that had my pucker factor going. You got
I watched we drove the lift over a manhole cover on an older state building, and I watched the lift snap the manhole cover. And I never would have guessed that, but it literally, it snapped it just in half. And manhole covers are round for a reason, so they wouldn't fall in on each other. Well, half of a manhole cover will fall in on itself.
That's another thing. When you start looking around, you see that there's these round pieces of concrete around pieces of pipe, right? And they're there to help protect that pipe a little bit, for trimming and, lawn mowing and all that kind of thing. But you got to think about that pipe is sticking up and they've got that round piece of concrete around it, right? As a little bit of a protector. If you crack that and break that piece of pipe goes straight down to whatever piece of pipe that it's attached to. And if you start pushing on that, you're going to bend or break that. And depending on what that is, if it's a water line, you can break that water line.
Yeah, no, you absolutely can. And these are areas that we have to worry about, of what's underneath it. And Stephen had just made the comment about, the lift pads. There's a video out there of us, where we would take plywood whenever we transitioned over to Crystal Clean. They changed up and made us start using the Granger pads on there. They're horribly expensive, but well worth it. I mean, guys, you've got to protect things. I mean, that's going to make the solid ground that you may or may not have up under areas. And you need to make sure you're working on solid ground, because you will break stuff and things
especially concrete sidewalks and all that. I can't tell you how many times I see broken corners or just broken edges of concrete, and it's always from a lift or it's from some big piece of heavy equipment that they tried to drive across it or whatever. And that those pieces of concrete aren't meant for that type of traffic. They're just not.
This is the job where we broke the manhole cover out there, on a 80-something foot lift. And I'm not seeing pictures of the manhole cover, but I'll never forget that, we were just literally traversing from, right here. And it was underneath this cone right here, but there was a cover, a cast iron cover that we hit it, and it was like clunk clunk, and you heard it fall in on itself. And now there's a 2-foot hole sitting there that we had to let the property manager know about. And it was a massive problem out there. But yeah, kind of crazy to think that it would happen. And I never would have guessed that we'd have done that. But so other areas, of concern, your landscape, obviously you can bury a lift so bad. Underground sprinklers and plumbing. And this is where those lift pads or plywood will really, really help that, because you're taking a 25,000 pound weight and you're helping to spread that out over a 4-foot by 8-foot area. Ruts in the grass, which can be really expensive, cracked sidewalks. And when we start talking about, the weight on this stuff, I mean, just look at on here. So a 50-foot tow behind, which a lot of us use, they're easy. Mm-hmm. You can get them from Home Depot. You can get it from Home Depot. You can get them from, cash and carry, $475, $500 a day. They weigh about 4,400 pounds. You can carry, 500. One of the things that I love about the Genie website, any of their lifts they have, it'll show you their total range of motion. So that if you go up 20 foot, that you can go out 30 foot. And it's a 50-foot tow behind, so it'll put your feet up there at the 50-foot location. Now,
if you actually rent one of these, you should get the specs from them. Everyone that I know of, they will provide you with the specs for them.
What's nice about these is there's some good and some bads. 3-4 guys on level ground can move this thing around and get it into position. It comes off. They're very, very affordable. They get in position real easy, and for as high as tall as they are, you really have a lot of range. We used to use these a great deal. This and the Nifty lift is what a lot of guys will wind up
I love
buying.
the tow behinds.
And you can get them into areas like, even like here's one where I'm doing the garbage transfer station. I can pull it right into there. I can pull it into this courtyard area that I was working on. The self-propelleds, they get a lot heavier. You're typically going to have them brought out to you. They're going to deliver, or you're going to need a semi or a 350 and a flatbed to move that. They can be expensive and they can be extremely heavy. On something like a 65-foot boom lift, it's 21,000 pounds. Because you realize that's heavy. 21,000 pounds is heavy. You get up there to a 85-foot, you're at about 28,000 pounds. You get up to a 125, you're at about 35,000 pounds.
I thought the 135s were like up around 60,000 pounds.
Well, they might be. I mean, I've seen them. I know they're at least 35.
That's what stuck in my head for some reason.
They're nice, a lot of good range to them. I typically would always go with an 85 instead of a 65 in all honesty.
Go back to that picture you were just at, Ray. So on something like this, I actually think this is kind of important to think about too, where if you look at it, when you're sitting there, sometimes people, when they're talking about lifts, they say, oh yeah, well, we can get right up next to the building. But if you look at it, all that landscaping is at an angle. And so you don't want to be, sure, you can take that lift up and you might be able to start, but sometimes you start up and you're going to set off the safety alarms on it because
you can't get down or you have a problem. Yeah. And this is why I went with an 85. I mean, I really didn't need more than a 45-foot for this building if you could drive it up along the building like that. But I have a road out here that I could go and keep the wheels on. It's actually asphalt road and not have to get out there and mess up landscaping, not have to put plywood, and not run the risk of it not leveling up. I mean, you and I were talking, I'm subbing out a job here coming up real soon for someone that's a 160-foot, 150-foot water tower. I've done this water tower before. I rented a 125-foot lift to do this water tower. Guess what? 125 wouldn't work. We literally could not level a 125 up on this thing. And a lot of people
know, if you're looking and you're trying to figure out what size lift you need, ask the lift company, right? A lot of times those lift companies will send somebody out to that location. They'll tell you what size lift you need in order to get a job done. And sometimes it may require more than one type of lift.
Absolutely. I've had hotels where I've had 3 different lifts, on there. About to show you one here. And just because a lift, the bigger the lift it is, the flatter the ground it's going to require. So a lot of times a 125, we had to turn it in and we had to work off of an 85 because the 125 would get up to that 60-foot safety level and would never go past that. And we tried chalking the wheels. We tried putting plywood under it to create an artificial level on stuff. We never could get it level enough to get up to where we needed to go on there. So we wound up having to climb the water tower and hit it from that way. So always having a backup plan, is a good idea on here. Scissor lifts, love them. They're very they're very stable. They're limited in what they can do. You need to be on really flat ground for them. They're self-propelled. They're just super easy to use. Ironically, on this, a scissor lift is considered mobile scaffolding, and you don't necessarily have to wear a harness to meet OSHA standards in a scissor lift. However, you're a big dummy if you don't wear a harness in there.
One of the things that, like, especially the scissor lift that you're showing, some of them have a platform that stretches out even further.
Yeah, you can
literally roll that thing out. And I used to love that, to get underneath some things where we could set the machine up to where it goes right on the outside of the building. But then when you get up there, you just push your landing out a little bit. And
this one is actually extended out. If you notice right here. So this is the table that comes in I've got this thing extended out that extra 4 foot along in there,
Mhm.
where we've got it pushed out, because if you bring it down, this is the part that would level up to here. So we've got that little extra 4 foot of length on it.
And as
These
Stephen
mini
is
lifts
saying, when you start talking about, like he's saying about two-way communication, one thing I want to mention about two-way, the two-way radios do two things for you. You start thinking about, you got your machines running in the background and you're trying to yell down, what? You don't want that. You want good, clear communication between you and the ground guy to
Yep.
begin with. But secondly, what looks more professional? Hey, Stephen, can you go ahead and shut that pump off for me? Or, hey, Steve, no, just get
Mhm.
the radios. They're super
Absolutely.
cheap.
Nick, Nick has made the comment that these mini lifts are scary, and they really are scary. It's like riding a piece of spaghetti whenever you get these things up at full extension. The cool thing is, it will fit through a 3 foot door if you're ever in an area where you can't get any other type of lift out there. A 4-story, 5-story hotel that just flummoxes everybody. And the only way I've ever found to truly get out there is on the mini lift from this back portico, because there's no ramps or anything going up to it. Cranes are great. A good operator speeds up your work. It can be really, really expensive. Heck, when we wrote this class, it says 100 to 350 an hour. I'd say you're more like 300 to 450 an hour.
Plus, you also, with cranes, a lot of times you have to remember, like on lifts, they'll have a delivery charge, and that delivery charge might be like, let's say, $165 to bring it out, $165 to bring it back. Okay, with a crane, it's different. Typically, they're charging you from the time it leaves the shop until the time it gets back to the shop. So
correct.
They have drive time in there. So if your location is 2 hours away from the crane, you might spend $1,000 just getting it to the location.
Getting it to you. Something else too is it's not like you need to work with your crane operator and go ahead and say, okay, how many moves are you expecting today? Because whenever they go and move your crane for you, you're on the clock at that. Like if they can only get half of this steeple from being here, when they move to this side, it can take it, even though that's only about 50 foot. But if they have to bring in the jib, undo the man basket, move the crane around, that could take an hour, and that's on your dime on doing that. So you need a lot of pre-planning. You better not have more than 2 crane moves, or half your day is going to be sucked up.
And that's one of those things, again, we're talking to, especially the crane operator ahead of time, but talking to the salesperson ahead of time, making sure of where that thing is going to be set up. So hopefully you don't have to make any moves. Once it's there, and you can reach. Don't sit there and go with your own side and say, well, I'd rather work from this side first, and then we'll move it around to the other side. Because those big cranes, I mean, if they go in the center, they can reach you over to this side, and they can reach you over to that side. And knowing your hand signals and all that kind of thing, as well as having
I think
Paul
just mentioned that, it's not a bad idea to learn, crane, the arm signals of, take me up, bring me down,
yeah, it's not go like this. It's actually you stick your arm out and say, that way, dude.
But now,
boom down, hold the load, boom up, hold the load.
Yep, absolutely on that. But 100%, Palm Tree, you are correct on there. So, Doug, you've been doing so much research on this, and I don't know if people may or I don't know. Have you announced what we did this past weekend or not?
I put it in the newsletter that Ray and I did go to the Appellix location and just kind of checked out their operation, spent some time talking with them and all that sort of thing. So. And so Rusty's asking drone versus lift use thoughts. I'm going to tell you what, I think the drones have a very big place and will take a very big place. But even like that church that he had there, I think that would be a great thing for a drone. But drones aren't everything, and they're not going to be able to catch everything, and they're not going to be able to do everything. I'm working on a class right now for the drones that is going to be about EMI and EMP. which is electromagnetic interference, electromagnetic pulses, things that will disconnect the controller from the drone and things that you need to be aware of, those sorts of things. So there are a lot of things that where the drone is just not the right tool for the job. It is just another tool. I happen to like them. I happen to like them a lot. And I happen to think they're going to be a very large part of what we do. And people are starting to embrace them. I'm liking them.
Yeah, I agree with you. But is it going to be a one size fits all? I doubt it. I mean, it's probably not going to be.
And it's not going to be one of those things where you're going to get immaculate windows doing that. No, you're going to typically, if the building has been, this goes back to something we talk about all the time, Ray, where we talk about, at least one of the things I like to say is the best piece of advice that I can ever give is I didn't do it. And what I mean by that is I didn't cause the damage. I didn't, whatever.
Right.
What I mean by I didn't do it is I'm not the one that waited so long to get my building clean. I'm not the one that waited for the moss and the lichen and the parade days and all this. I'm not the one that caused that. Right. I'm just here to fix that.
I mean, it's a pressure washer, not a time machine.
Exactly.
It's not, I mean, we can't turn back the clock on so many of these things that you chose to give poor maintenance on. That's really a bad problem on there. And again, we just can't we can't turn back the time in that respect and go and say, well, the best time to clean, your windows would have been, yeah.
And honesty is not a bad thing in that kind of stuff. You just got to be honest with him. I mean, don't be rude and abrupt and, all that kind of stuff. But, being honest that, this would have been a great drone job 2 years ago, but now it is going to require us to hand clean the thing. And then we can set you up on a maintenance plan where the drone can come through and do it. And there's so many different things I could get into on the drone side, but then we'd be changing the whole conversation. I don't want to do that. But so they are a tool, the same thing as a hammer and a saw.
They're a tool, but you know what? They're also a very dangerous tool. And they're a tool that a lot of us are going to use. One of the biggest things that I could recommend with a drone, with somebody like your what's the word I'm looking for? A drone. Now you got me thinking about drones.
A pilot.
With a lift. It's first
just so everybody knows, I know what's going on in the background. You guys don't see it, but Ray is scrolling through pictures, trying to find pictures, and he's scrolling down memory lane, and so his brain is off. And you guys don't get to see that, but I do.
I'm sitting here thinking of drones, and but whenever you go and whenever you go to Sunbelt and you're talking, guys, go ahead and get an account at Sunbelt. Get an account at United Rentals or Equipment Share. Get a rep assigned to you, even if you're not planning on doing this, but go ahead and say, hey, I want to get a credit account, with you guys. That way you're not going to have to cash and carry something. That way as well, you're going to have an account rep that takes care of you. And right now, I haven't used him in 2 years. He called me the other day out of the blue going, Ray, just checking on you, buddy. How you? I was like, great, man, it's so good to talk to you. And I told him about some stuff going on in our life. And he was like, holy crap, great idea on that. We're about to reconnect. But Greg would come out to my jobs whenever I would get flummoxed on some stuff and say, I don't know what lift to use, and I'm pretty darn smart whenever it comes to lifts out here. What do you think, Greg? And that's literally their job. Is they come in and they, okay, they'll take their laser level and they'll say, okay, that's 97.5 feet up to there, but you've also got a 16% grade, so we're not going to get this to level up. What if we used this kind of lift here and that kind of lift there? And all of a sudden, they save you money by you just getting
and they
an
don't cost you
account with
anything.
them.
Another thing about that is that, when you sit there, I have talked to people and they say, well, I don't want to set up an account because, like I'm only going to use them maybe once or twice a year. And I don't feel like they're going to look, how these guys look at you for the most part.
Yeah.
I mean, even if it is only once or twice a year, but when I started, when Ray started, when most of you started, right? You didn't start out using a lift. And then all of a sudden, the next thing you know, you're renting it out, one time a year, and then you're renting it out 10 times a year, and then you're renting it out 100 times a year. They understand that there's this thing. They understand that you might fail, right? But if they looked at everybody as, this person's going to fail, they're never going to make their business grow, because a lot of these guys work on commission as well. So their job is to help you, and their job is to, help you set up the account. They're going to even help you in ways to try to help you sell jobs and make money, because that's how you come back to them.
They're going to try to save you money. They're going to try to, get you the most efficient lift as possible. They're going to, there's just, so much that they're going to wind up trying to help you with out there. And this is all just, part of being a good rep. Being a good rep for you, and they want to oh man, look at that. That's a photo I'm proud of right there. But this is memory lane. I gotta stop this crap.
It's funny because as you were scrolling, I saw a couple of the political things that I remember in my head. So
but these guys are absolutely, amazing at what they do. And what, you were talking about, lift pictures earlier and photographs that, the one person comes to mind. Y'all realize that. So here we are doing solar panels out here, and this is such an easy job, but I've still made my guys wear their harnesses on there. This may have been a 412 thing, and there might have even been some pictures without harnesses on there, but by God, I'm deleting those photographs and not going to have them in my feed because of that. It's just insane, the potential.
And another thing to think about here too, when we're talking about, cranes and we're talking about lifts and all that, you do have to think, if you're using a crane and a basket and you're using a pressure washer, that blast and all that can be harder to maintain where you're at, because that basket is going to twist and turn and move on you with the way that you're using your wand. So all of those things have to be looked at when you're looking at which is the best thing for you and what you're doing. And sometimes where the soft wash comes in and then the pressure rinse, all of those different factors fall into play.
Well, you might need a basket. You need a rope on your basket, holding that basket into place right there, Doug, and saying, okay, I might need to actually just literally, some guy is his job for the day is going to be just holding on to this thing and not letting the basket, move around on there. And that's fun. And hey, trust me, that's a job in itself, right along there, of not letting this thing swing around. But it might be very much a necessary job to do out there, because if not, you're pressure washing, and what's going to happen? It's just going to spin around like that. And I'm actually looking for.
And I will say, if you're in a basket, a crane basket, and you use a pressure washer and you put it off and you start spinning that thing around, it can be fun. I mean,
it can be. It can also,
not that I would personally know, right? But it can be kind of fun to just. It's like sitting in a chair on the ground.
Also scare the living, bejesus out of you as well too there, and ask me how I know that.
Well, it can also result in the crane operator having words with you, kind of like, if that ever happens again, our company will never work with you. I mean, these things happen out there.
Here's one where, and people don't realize this, but this was here we are up in this crane on here, and this winds up being a one-day job with a good crane operator on this job. And hey, it was, worked out real well, and everybody was happy, city was happy, we're happy, and we got this thing just absolutely knocked out and done with us up here on a man basket, 165 foot, above terra firma out here. It worked out really, really well with the man basket on here. This is how this joker started out. It was pretty funky and nasty, and
I can tell you, probably my favorite to work with has been
this is
cranes.
how it ended. Your favorite to work with is what?
Was cranes.
Yeah.
I mean, I love being in a lift. I love equipment. It's funny. I used to own a extended boom forklift, and you were talking about, or we were talking about rain and all this, and I had an extended boom forklift that I actually sank into the mud, so deep into the mud, I could step out of straight off onto the ground, basically at about a 3 or 4 inch deal. That's how far I sunk it into the mud, because I kept trying to get out, and all I was doing was sinking it further, right? And so, it's just one of those things where sometimes you start, and talking about owning equipment versus renting. Guess what? I had to pay for all those repairs, and which I would have had to if I'd have been renting as well, anyhow. But nonetheless, trying to get that thing out of there was not an easy task.
I'll never, I mean, that's, I remember getting getting a lift stuck up under an erector set water tower at one point, and we were at full extension on this thing, and boy, Doug, that sucked. I mean, that was
How'd you get it out?
Huh?
How'd you get it out?
Appalachia Towing and Wrecker. You can see the picture right there, and I mean, we were frame stuck on that thing.
Yeah.
Not only that, I had $1,000 worth of sodding and grading to do. After we got it out, and about a $1,500 tow bill on that thing. It was absolutely, it was horrific. It was awful. Yeah, it was amazing. But it's one of those things you live and you learn, because you forget that you're you literally forget that you're dropping down several thousand gallons of water underneath this thing. So now
you're creating that soft spot.
This ground that was tight and dry whenever you started, by the end of the day, is not tight and dry anymore. That ground is wet and moist and problematic. Yeah.
Yeah, what wasn't a problem before you started became a problem after you started.
It's a problem now.
Putting all that water, all that liquid down there.
We ought to do a show just talking about water towers. I've gotten a bunch of water. We still have the water tower class, don't we, out there? Mm-hmm.
You know, that's another one that would be a good one to do. Just simple ladder safety.
So, you know, you've heard of Elf on a Shelf.
Mm-hmm.
So you know what this is?
Go for it.
You know, that's TJ on a DJ.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh man. Hey.
I wasn't sure because the screen is so small. It was hard to tell. I was like, I think that's TJ.
It's TJ. It's TJ on a DJ. So, there's a good one. Did you know you can soft wash grass?
Yeah, but you got to pressure rinse all that kind of garbage off. We had to do after the flood happened here in Louisiana. We had so much of that astroturf that we had to clean.
Right.
Oh man, it was a long, miserable time trying to get all that because you're fighting against all the mud and muck.
Oh, it's horrible. All the sand comes up from Nick, that gauge is, let me go back and show you. This gauge is that is a pressure and flow meter on there. So we're getting 2.81 gallons a minute, and looks like at only less than 10 psi out of there. But it's a digital pressure and flow gauge. It's custom made on there. Pretty handy things, but you know, it's also one of those things that you know, whenever Tim was you know, he was creating the proportioner. You know, we're not just you know, BSing on things like that. Like even whenever we went and you know, did the flow test for the Pro Tap on here. We were sitting here testing out and putting that out there. So this is how we know that we could get, you know, on a backflow preventer, we could get 8.3 gallons and 8.68 gallons coming out of one 3/4 inch Pro Tap.
It's amazing how much water comes out of those things.
It really, really is. So there we are at almost 17 gallons. And then, you know, we're hooking up to the same place at the back side of the house. And we're only getting, you know, out of one spigot, we're getting 3.26 out of the spigot out of the back of the house. But we're actually getting 17 gallons hooking up, you know, out of it. Here's another spigot that we were getting 3.63 gallons out of. This is, you know, and again, this is why, you know, we laugh at so many people in this industry, because we know a lot of guys just sit there and are completely full of crap and don't use things like this. I mean, I know very few people that have ever actually empirically tested data on things like this in the industry. Here we are getting 9.5 and 8.68 out of something, you know. Now we can actually, you know, you can feed a booster pump, you can feed a 10 gallon a minute AR or 12 gallon a minute Udor, you know, whenever you're replacing that kind of water out of something. I mean, you try to replace it out of one spigot and back that's only running at 3.62 gallons a minute, then you got a problem. Right there, you know, you'll never keep up with your water on things like that. So, well, look at there's an old holiday lighting estimate from years ago. How about that?
Yeah, prices are probably triple now.
Oh gosh,
I don't know what they are. I mean,
that was probably from 2014 or so. So wow. Yeah, pretty long time ago on there. So Yeah, that's why a lot of times we say, whenever we give you measurements and stuff, we're going to kind of stand by those measurements. We've actually tried to measure, them before.
Well, that's why a lot of what we do too. I mean, most of our classes and all that, they're written off of actual, things like this, where we've gone to the manufacturers or, the flow tests or whatever it is. That it's from actual knowledge that we've gotten.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I agree. Well, Doug, I think we have gone through another hour once again. Let's say goodnight to our guests.
And appreciate you all for joining us again.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. We do appreciate it. And we'll see y'all next Monday. See you. Bye.